Hi everyone, how you doing? It's great to see you this Friday. I have to do this weird smile once I'm live because I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to all of you, and the picture at the beginning of the video is going to represent me in a nice way, because every time I get these weird pictures of myself. I'm very excited to be live with you today. I need to do a small adjustment on my live Insta. Give me a quick second, just going to mobile. And hopefully this should be working, but it doesn't seem to be working. So give me 1 second for everybody that's on YouTube and and Facebook as I connect this, and I will have this running up in just a quick second. Sorry for that. All right, here we go. Just putting the title really quickly. So first of all, I just want to see, how are you guys this week with the lockdown? I hope everything is going well for you, and that your families are safe and are, safe from COVID itself, and are taking the necessary precautions and are well mentally and emotionally. Let me get this running. Here we go. Checking connection. And we're live. Okay, so we're good to go. So what I'd like to do today is to talk about toxic thoughts. The objective of this session today is to discuss with you some ideas that I've had over the past week as I was looking at what's going on, specifically in Lebanon and the surrounding region. It has occurred to me that we are spending a lot of time in some negative behaviors. And these negative behaviors have a direct impact on our brain. So being that my background is in neuroscience in certain context, okay, as a researcher in neuroscience and in the field of coaching, development, so forth, it just occurred to me that it might make a lot of sense for me to share some of these thoughts with you over the next half an hour and discuss what it really means to stop toxic thoughts in our life and how these toxic thoughts are impacting every moment of our existence. So it's not a matter of day to day, but actually every moment of our existence. So I'm going to do two small things. Hello to everyone. Thank you so much. Just got to close the window here. I figured it might get hot, and I just decided that it's not. It's pretty cold. So what does this mean and what is this about? Now, for everyone that's watching on Instagram, I would like to invite you to go to my profile, click on the link for StreamYard, and log into StreamYard. And the reason for it is because I'm going to do something today that I have not been able to do before, which is I'm going to cast my screen on StreamYard, which will allow me to display a place where I can write down notes. For those of you on Instagram, you won't be able to see those notes. So you're free to follow this session by listening, but it might not be as effective as if you could see the visuals. So if you have something else, so if you want to continue watching on Instagram, you can do that. But if you have something else that you want to tap into just to be able to see my notes and what I'm drawing for you, because I'm going to try to illustrate a lot of stuff, hopefully that should be a really interesting way to get a lot of ideas across to all of you guys. So let's get straight into it. Primarily, when we talk about toxic thoughts, we have to understand what that really means for us. So let's start by identifying it. I wrote a couple of notes here so that I have a bit more structure. Have you noticed that over the past, and this conversation is going to be directed a little bit towards Lebanon, because I like to tackle the challenges that we're going through right now, being that I'm living currently in Lebanon. And for those of you who are living all over the world, because I can see many of my lovely friends who have logged in from other places, please just feel free to apply them to your reality. I'm sure you're going to find that information really does apply in that sense, okay? So here's the thing. In general, when you put yourself in a position where you are blaming the world around you for the situation you're going in, when you are blaming the government for the outcome that we're currently in right now, whether it's Lebanon or another country, when you're blaming politicians, when you're blaming leaders or supposed leaders in your society, when you're blaming others, so other members of your community, okay, when you're blaming everyone else other than yourself, and that's not that I want you to blame, but contextually, you're actually in a situation where you're manipulating your own thoughts and you're creating toxic thoughts for yourself. Because the process of blame requires there to be a victim. So when you are blaming someone else for the outcome in your life, you have subconsciously accepted the fact in your own mind that you're a victim. And what the meaning of a victim is an individual who does not have the capacity to currently deal with the situation they're in, and as such, they are forced to accept the choices of others impacting their own lives. Now, some of you are going to say, okay, John, are you telling me that I'm supposed to ignore the fact that the world is messed up right now? Am I supposed to ignore the fact that I have really nasty and, let's say, unethical politicians who are taking advantage of the people and robbing us of every single right they can think of? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying stop wasting energy blaming them. Because where we are today when it comes to COVID is not just the responsibility of people who are in power, right? Whatever form of power that is, but is also our responsibility in our choices that have actually, brought COVID to others. So that doesn't mean that we are like, so let me put this in a different context. It's not the minister who actually transferred COVID to your neighbor. It's you or someone in your community. So what that means is, in context, we are responsible for the choices that exist in our life. Now, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because I would like to let you know that what's most important to me as an individual sharing knowledge with you, okay, if you allow me to say that, is that you don't hurt your brain in the process. Okay, I've noticed someone has joined my live stream. I'm not sure if she's aware that she's on live. So let me just check with her really quickly. Give me a second. Okay, let me try to invite her over. Lynn, how are you? You're with me. You don't have to turn on your cam because I don't know if you know that you're currently on the live call, but you can unmute if you'd like, and then you can engage with me in a conversation. So if you do want to join this conversation, you're more than welcome to. I love having guests on the show. So feel free to unmute right now. Hopefully she recognizes that she's on the show.
Hi.
Hi. Are you aware? You're on the show?
I just got aware.
Okay, I thought so. It's all right.
Yeah.
You can join me in the conversation that I'm sharing and share your thoughts. You don't have to turn on your cam. It's okay. I mean, if you do, that's amazing. But it's good to hear your voice. Thank you for joining. It's a pleasure. Thank you for it's just an absolute honor for me. So I'm going to continue thank you. I'm going to continue giving the introduction really quickly, and then we'll open up for a dialogue. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, you do know we're talking about toxic thoughts today, so that's what we're really going to be focusing on, yes?
Yes, I know.
Okay, awesome. So in this moment, I'm going to ask you to keep your mic on mute until we have discussions. You can unmute to talk and then mute again, just so that we keep the airway clear for everybody. Is that okay?
All right. Yeah, of course. Okay.
Cool. Thank you so much. If anybody else wants to join, you can do too, guys. I can have up to 4 speakers on any given point in time, so we're cool. Again, for those watching Instagram, thank you. You can do that. You can reach on StreamYard. The link is in my bio. So what I'm saying is, ultimately, as individuals, when we blame others, we are putting ourselves in a position where we are taking the power away from us to actually deal with the situation. Now, that's fine. But what's dangerous about this is that you are actually causing brain damage to your neural network. And I don't think a lot of people know that, okay? So what that means is, to an extent, it means that you are actually hurting your brain in the way that you've designed it or that you've dealt with it, okay? Instagram, if you're having connection issues, please log in on StreamYard. The link is in my bio. You're gonna get a much better connection there. Thank you so much. Now, let me try to illustrate this. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump to screen sharing in a few seconds. But before that, I'd like to welcome Lynn and hear her thoughts on what she'd like to share. And that way we can have a good discussion with her, and then we'll move on to the main points. Lynn, you can talk now. How are you?
I'm good. What about
Awesome. Would you
you?
like to tell us? I'm good. Would you like to tell us a tiny bit about you, just so we have context? Where do you live?
Yes, I'm gonna
I
talk
don't
about
need the area.
myself.
Okay.
Okay, I'm 26 years old, I'm gonna turn like 27 years in 14th of March.
Okay.
I'm a Lebanese. All right. What do you want to know more?
No worries. Do you live in Lebanon right now?
Yes, I live in Babdet.
Okay. Thank you. That's enough information. We don't need a lot more than that. I just wanted to know if you're
Okay.
actually residing in the country. Lynn, are you dealing with toxic thoughts, or what attracted you to this topic?
What attracted me to this topic is that the toxic thoughts. I'm a pessimistic kind of person, so I usually think about negative stuff, especially during these phases that we're going through,
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
and
It's so
it's very
interesting that
hard.
you. Sorry, go ahead, please.
No,
Go
it's
ahead.
fine.
It's very hard. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, it's very hard, to keep on going because like your thoughts can't, if you want, like they lock you in a they
Mm,
imprison you actually in the moment.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's a hard phase.
Well, I got to tell you, you're very brave, and it's very honorable of you to just show up on the show and kind of communicate how you really feel from the depth of your heart, and share that vulnerability with us. And I would like to tell you that this is a safe
Thank you.
space, and I think everyone here, and I can see hearts flying on the comments. And if you guys feel like commenting, letting Lynn, giving her some support here, because I think it's really essential for
Thank
us to
you.
understand that we are all human beings, and we all go through this, including myself, many, many times. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, I was going through a dark, cloudy period, maybe just 2 days after New Year's, as I was thinking to
Yeah.
myself and saying, I am so fed up with the situation in Lebanon. I mean, so fed up. And being that I have the luxury and the blessing of leaving, and I just thought to myself, I was like, what am I going to do moving forward? How do I change this reality in my mind? And I just started to digest some things and recognize that even I, as an individual who has some experience in this field of self-development, managing your own self-management at the level of your mind, body, and emotions, and we all fall into that trap. And so I felt very driven today to share this topic, because I think it's going to relieve a lot of people when we illustrate where toxic thoughts come in from. And I even just got a call from a friend of mine yesterday sharing the same concerns about it. And I just said, okay, this is a sign. I'm going to have to talk about this. It's almost like God wants me to talk about this, and hopefully it will be beneficial to everybody that's going to be on the show. So really thank you for doing that, for coming in, for sharing your experiences. And you can stick around with me. I see someone else has joined called Boss, which is an interesting nickname. So I'm gonna invite Boss also to the call. I just want you guys to know two things. I have only two conditions on my show. The first is absolute respect. So we respect people who are on the show, and respect me, please, if you can, to an extent, as in respectful conversation. And two, at the same point in time, whatever we say, we are responsible for, because we don't know who's going to end up watching this replay. And so I want to make sure that in case it's someone's watching this replay who's younger than 18, that we keep the communication in the show very, very respectful. Okay, so let me go ahead and add Boss really quickly and see who's also with us. Boss.
Hey, boss.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for coming in on the show. It's very, very nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing these webcasts. I have a quick question for you.
Please, go ahead.
So there is this guru, this Indian guru called Sadhguru. He says, don't try to stop negative thoughts, as there is no such thing as a positive or negative thought. And that fighting your own thoughts is like fighting your own ghosts. You make them and then fight against them. What do you think about that?
Thank you so much for that question. That's actually a very interesting question. It's going to be answered in what I'm going to be talking about in just a bit and illustrated for everybody. I definitely do agree with the idea of negative and positive, that they don't really exist in the context of negative and positive, but I could say it is relative to what is negative and positive to the context of you. So in neuroscience, we talked about something called cognitive dissonance, when there is a, how do we say, a space between what you're saying about the world and what you believe is really happening about the world. So when these two do not match, that can cause a negative rift in our brain and cause us a lot of stress, and even lead us towards, severe issues in our personality or the way we feel about things. So I think we're going to illustrate on this. Would it be possible for me to have you log back on in just a bit after I've explained these ideas, or you can share in the chat and let me know if we targeted the topic the way you want it to be targeted?
Can I stay on StreamYard and just mute my mic? Does that work?
Yes, I'm going to move you. I'm going to move you guys off the direct streaming thing. Yes, you can stay, absolutely, just so I can actually broadcast the screen sharing that I'd like to do. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Of course.
keep your mics on mute, and I'll bring you back into the call in just a bit. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. I'm also looking at the same time, and I can see here. Let me just see how to do the screen sharing thing. I think I need to remove. Please stay on the call. I'll invite you guys back in just a second. Let me just see how to share. That's one of the things I thought would be very easy. So share screen. Here we go. Share. So I think you guys can see the screen right now and see me at the same time. And I'm going to jump into drawing. I'm also seeing some comments. We're on fire here on Insta. So of course I'm filled with empower me to overcome. Thank you so much, Patashu. I hear you. Pessimism is not easy to bounce out of, but it can be aware in the moment and understand what triggers it in the first place. You can slowly get rid of it. Don't give up. Yep. So you've gotten a lot of good comments here. Patashu is saying, Lynn, add me. I'd love to help you also. I can try to lift you up. Also, I've been in dark places too and had huge destructive trials in my life, and I came out a champ. So this is Patty on Instagram. If you'd like, Lynn, I can share that with her contacts with you later. And Nayul too. They're really lovely ladies, lovely people. So let's kind of get into the drawing of things. I'm going to maximize this for a few seconds so you can see a bigger picture. I'd like to start off by just illustrating what's going on in our brain. And I'm so sorry, people on Instagram. You might want to try to find a way to log into StreamYard too, so you can see what I'm drawing right now. But I'll try to verbalize everything for you as much as I can, I promise. So what's going to happen here is, as people, let's see where that pen is. There we go. What's happening in our brain at all times. So let's say this is who I am. And I'm just going to put myself here as an individual. Okay. See, the guy already has my hairstyle, bald. Okay. And this is, let's call him Joe. Okay. And Joe is currently in a situation where he is experiencing certain thoughts in his mind. So what you notice is Joe is seeing, he's observing, okay, through the eye, that's an eye. All right, that in his reality right now, what he's seeing in front of him on the news, okay, is something very negative about the world and what's going on. So Joe takes in this information into his brain through his perceptions, through his senses, and in his brain, it creates a new image. And that new image in his brain, we call a representation, okay? So sort of like a summary of what's going on in the world around him. Now, the issue with the representation is that once this information goes into Joe's brain, at the same point in time, there's a magical experience happening here, which is Joe's brain is also tapping into old memories of similar experiences. And these two are mixing together to create this new representation of what that is, okay? And whatever that representation is, whatever that means to Joe, okay? You know, I'm going to try to do this. Let me try to flip the cam for everybody on Instagram. And let me try to put it, okay, that's not supposed to be there, but there you go. Let me try to put it I'm really trying to do this for you guys. Give me 1 second. There you go. That's widescreen. Sorry, guys. I haven't really done this before, so I'm just learning how to do this. And I'm going to try to zoom in for you. And I think right now, you guys on Insta can see what's going on. All right. So what's happening here in this situation? Okay, I see the hearts. Okay, that's awesome. So what's happening here in Joe's head is that these memories, okay, and the situation is happening created a new representation. Now, what's the issue with this representation? If this representation has a negative connotation in Joe's reality, okay, so if it has a negative meaning, and we call this a meaning, okay, أو المعنى is negative, then what's going to happen is that representation is translated into a chemical experience, okay, sort of like what we call neurotransmitters, endorphins, and stuff like that. And that chemical experience translates into the body, into what we call feelings, right? And those feelings will drive something called behavior. Now, here's where things get tricky. So this behavior, if it is negative, and that person behaves negatively with the world around them, okay, the world will mirror that behavior. So here's the mirror, okay? And what's going to happen is that if Joe is sending out negativity to the world, anger, frustration, blame, you know, all these negative emotions, what the world is going to give Joe back is negativity. And then that is going to create something called reinforcement. And Joe is going to say, huh, you see, the world is messed up. This situation is nasty. And what's happening right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this. Okay, what's happening right now is true. So what Joe's understanding right now is, I told you the world is messed up. You see Lebanon's messed up, or the country is messed up. COVID is nasty. Everything is nasty, because what's actually happening is Joe's brain is doing what it's naturally meant to do, which is to create results. So what we plug in to our reality, okay, which are our thoughts and how we think, is going to very much affect the outcome of our life. And this becomes a vicious cycle where we go from reinforcement back to the way we see the world. And this affects this right here, which is what we call a filter, okay? Or in NLP, you can call it sometimes a frame, okay? And a frame here is something like this. It's a frame in which we see the world. So Joe's frame of the world now, because it's being reinforced, is that Lebanon, for example, is never going to change. Haven't you heard that before? Haven't you heard people say, for example, لبنان ما بيتغير بحياته? Haven't you heard that stuff? Okay, so what does that mean when we say لبنان ما بيتغير بحياته? That Lebanon will never change. Insta, I'm trying to move the camera for you guys, so you're seeing the same thing. I hope this is clear for you, and thanks everybody else who's watching. So what do we do? How do we deal with this, and what does that mean at the level of our brain? Look, this means maybe a couple of important things that I think we should highlight right now. The first is, one, everything that enters my brain, I can filter it. Okay? The second thing, I can, so notice it's always can, decide how I want to react to it. So I have the power to decide how I want to react to it. So what does that mean? What does it mean to have the power to decide how I can react to that? Okay. And this is very important to recognize. Let me see. There we go. That's what I want. Okay. Why is this important? Because, ladies and gentlemen, in this area, if Joe is not in control of his decisions and his thoughts, what's going to happen is this cycle is going to take control of Joe. Now, let's add a few more complexities to this. So let's say that Joe is getting the news from social media. not just TV, but also social apps. And what do these social apps do? They look at what you spend most time on, and the algorithms say, I noticed Joe spends more time watching negative news. So the algorithm searches for all the accounts and all the resources of negative news, because that's what Joe seems to like the most, that's what Joe interacts with the most, okay, and feeds it to him. So not only are we manipulated by our own mind, but we are also manipulated by technology, by our mobile phones. So the world around us becomes more and more reinforced, and ultimately our brain turns this reinforced group of what we call triggers, I know this is a bit technical, into a belief. And this is where things go terribly wrong. Because once I start to believe that the world is messed up and that Joe, sees that Lebanon's messed up, things are messed up, things will never change, Joe starts to lose hope. And this is the major issue. Because when you lose hope, guys, that's where everything starts to mess up. Where you start to deal with issues related to stress, negative thinking, the blame game, victimization, all these negative behaviors start to pop up in your reality because you're ultimately in a situation where you've lost hope and now you're afraid. You have fear and anxiety in your heart because you feel that the future is not as bright as it should be. And you feel trapped in the reality that you're currently in. And that is the most dangerous thing. And so from that loss of hope, start the type of behaviors that cause the damage that we're looking for. So let me just invite Lynn and Boss back into the conversation for a few seconds before we go back to the drawing and just get their feedback on what I'm discussing so far. Lynn, Boss, if you'd like to share any feedback, let's start with Lynn. Lynn, how do you feel about what I just shared right now? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. What you shared is exactly what I'm going through, and it's like a cycle. It never ends. It's ongoing.
Would you like to break that cycle?
Of course.
Okay.
I would
So
love
would it be
to.
valuable for you if I was able to show you how to break that cycle?
I didn't hear you. It was
Sorry, I was saying, would it be valuable for you if I was able to show you how to break that cycle?
yeah, of course.
Okay, على راسي. That's what I'm going to do next. Thank you so much. Boss,
Thank you for you.
thank you. You're awesome. I'd like to invite you into the conversation.
Hey, John. I think what you just explained goes really well with something I read the other day, is that our thoughts are just thoughts. And it's not until you pump emotion into it that you actually decide if it's negative or positive or how you want it to go. It's just, it blows my mind that a thought is actually only a thought in the abstract, and whatever you put into it will go wherever you want it to go. So I do agree 100%.
And it's so interesting that you say whatever you put into it. So that means that you have conscious choice about how that thought affects you or about the outcome of that thought. Isn't it so?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting so far. I continue.
Very interesting. Yes, please go on.
Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate it. I'm going to remove you off the feed, but I'll bring you back in just a bit if that's okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So getting back into this example, let's take it to the next step. I just want to check on Insta. Everybody's doing okay. I know I'm asking you to put your phones in landscape mode, but is everybody okay on Insta? Everyone's fine. Everything's okay. Everything's clear. Can you see the information? Thank you for the hearts. Okay. So let's go back into this for a couple of seconds. When we talk about losing hope, I think it's important for us to illustrate. Oops, no, I don't want to zoom here. Okay, let me just zoom on this one. Illustrate a couple of things. So how do I control what's going on in my thoughts, because everyone talks about controlling emotions, okay? So a lot of people talk about, I want to control my negative emotions, but you can't actually control your negative emotions. You can control how you react to those emotions. So, and really, the control starts much earlier than that. It starts at the level of your thoughts, okay? Yusra, I can see you're saying how Lebanese can cope with this situation if there's already a helpless learning situation, bad economic situation, no insight in politicians. Yes, well, first we can start with our own ecology, Yusra, and then we can deal with the outside world. But if we're about to break down, then dealing with the outside world becomes almost impossible because we will be drained. So, you know, if you want to use your phone to make a call or to run your business, you first need to charge your phone before you can actually use it effectively for an hour call that's going to get you a deal. So our phone, in this case, is our entire ecology, who we are in total. And so it's important in this situation for us to be able to recharge our own batteries before we decide to deal with the rest of the world around us. Because we can't always change the world, and this is cliche, but we can change how the world affects us. And that's what I want to focus on today, about toxicity. So let's take a look at this drawing for a couple of seconds. So what I want to do for you here is highlight how you can take control of that situation. And this starts with the following ideas. Sorry for that. So to illustrate this in a more interesting way, the first thing you can do, and let's go back to Joe. I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. So in any situation that Joe is experiencing, right, what you're going to see is that if Joe is going through the experience here, so we're going to draw him again. And sorry, everybody, it's called Joe. And the experience for him is odd, okay? I want you to think about this. I'd like you to imagine that you are Joe, okay? So right now, this is you. And you are acting, try to do this exercise with me while I'm drawing it, in your own private Hollywood movie. So you're in the screen right now. This is the screen at a movie theater, okay? And you are sitting in a seat, okay? Forgive my artistic capabilities. So this is you, and this is your hand, and you are watching yourself going through the experience you're going through right now, okay? So you're actually watching yourself, you're observing yourself, you're seeing yourself go through the experience that you're going through right now. And we call this the observer. So the power of an observer, the power to observe, means that you can detach yourself from the emotions and still think logically as a situation is taking place. Okay? So how do you do this specifically? What you do is, in yourself, while I'm going through a certain experience, so like right now, I'm communicating to you guys using two digital mediums. The first is StreamYard, which is accessing all of Facebook, my Facebook page, my Facebook account, and YouTube, and also Instagram, which is currently on another phone, which is watching me off the screen. And here's the thing. I'm communicating to you. My body language is doing all the things it's doing. My voice is doing what it's supposed to be doing. The ideas and thoughts are coming through. But in fact, there's a version of me here, okay, that is watching me here do what I'm doing. And this version of me is always a calm, logical observer. It's simply sitting there and going, okay, what is John doing right now? And the cool thing about this version of me is because I'm a layer out, I'm disconnected, I'm disassociated from the experience I'm going through, this version is allowing me to think logically and also allows me to seek strength and communication from God, because I can think, Lord, for example, in the form of a prayer, how would you like me to deal with this situation? So if there's someone in this movie, and let's call her, I don't know, Sarah, okay, or because my best friend's name is Sarah, and I'm going to put a smiley face in Sarah, and let's say Joe and Sarah are arguing, okay, in this situation, if Joe's feeling bad about the argument that him and Sarah are having, this version of Joe here, okay, has the capacity to talk and think and process, okay, with himself before sending a signal of what action he wants to take. So in this situation, Sarah also has someone that is observing her, a version of her, and she can also think and choose before the emotions drive the experience for both parties. Okay? And so what that means is, in a classical sense, okay, that we as individuals have the power with training, okay, because this takes a lot of work, it's about developing that skill, to do several things. And we don't always have the power to do this in real time, because sometimes when we're going through a difficult situation, the emotions, the impact of this can be so strong that we are not capable of disassociating during that time, okay? But what we can always do is we can sit down after an experience and we can ask ourselves certain questions. So what are these questions that we can ask ourselves that empower us to be able to process this information? I'm taking a look, I can see on Instagram, you can be more rational when you're sitting on the outside versus being in the situation, following impulses. Exactly. The brain is so interesting. It works really weird ways. Actually know that you can control it and you're able to connection. Yes. In neuroscience, we know that we have much more control. In fact, we have almost a tremendous amount of control over our brain when we are in a disassociated state from the perspective of observing ourselves. That's why, if you notice, over the past couple of years, there was a big trend in something called mindfulness, okay? Because what mindfulness actually does, okay, is it strengthens that muscle. The whole purpose of mindfulness is to allow a person to observe thoughts and feelings, okay, from outside of themselves, from outside of the moment itself, from the experience. So they don't get pulled into the moment and they have the capacity to process these ideas. Now, some questions that you can ask yourself in this situation. Question number one would be, for example, what am I observing? Okay, so what am I seeing right now? What am I observing right now? Because observation is not just about seeing. So we observe by seeing, we observe by hearing, we observe by feeling, and these three, plus a few more, we can also say sensing, okay, are observation. Forget the spelling and the handwriting, okay? So what we're saying is, and here it's very important to recognize that what I'm observing, seeing, hearing, feeling, and sensing is observing the situation that I'm in. Now, why do I ask, what am I observing? Because I'm trying to identify in a very simple way, what was the trigger? Okay? Because triggers are, you know, when you shoot a gun, that's a trigger. So what were the triggers that caused my brain to think the way it thought? So going back to this original image right here, if you remember, I'm going to try to make this larger for everybody. Okay, when Joe experienced the news on his phone or on a TV, and it matched with previous memories of pain about Lebanon and how politicians have stolen our money and how people are irresponsible in many aspects, blah, 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 blah. He observed through sensing, hearing, feeling, and experiencing and all that stuff. And that created a representation in his brain, okay? And that representation in this case, whoops, is saying what was the trigger? Because when I know that the trigger is the news, and I've noticed that all the time when I'm watching the news, it's only causing negative representations in me, and these negative representations are causing me to experience chemicals that are negative, okay, and makes my body feel bad, changes my behavior, makes me negative. So what choice do I have available to me right now? Can I decide to stop watching the news? Yes or no? Now, some of you are going to tell me, John, what do you mean by stop watching the news? We can't stop watching the news. Really? Is it true that you can't stop watching the news? Because what's the purpose of watching the news? So we're going to go for a deeper question. we're going to ask ourselves, okay, if the trigger was the news, just to keep this example simple, so it was the news, okay, whatever the channel was or whatever the source was, okay, then I can ask myself the next question. I can open up what we call a dialogue, okay, a conversation between me and I. A conversation with myself. And I can say, well, okay, what is the motivation that I have to watch the news? What is that giving me? What's the purpose of that? Okay. And I might have an answer. I don't know what your answer is going to be, but you're going to have an answer. Maybe the answer is, I watch the news to know. So I want to know, okay, if there is danger and to be safe or survive. Sah? Isn't that what typically happens? So here I'm going to ask you a difficult question. I'm going to say, okay, guys, let's be honest. It's time for honesty. We're having an honest dialogue with ourselves. When in the history of the universe did the news that you're receiving from daily social apps and TV ever actually contribute to your safety? And if it did, how many times did it do so out of the 365 days a year where you watch the news? How many of those days was the news on point and allowed you to make an instant decision that saved your life or took care of you or made your life a lot better? When? And when was the news that was delivered to you ever objective? Okay, not subjective, but objective, not manipulated by opinions, not filtered by political agendas or religious agendas or whatever it was, but actually based on science and fact. I'm not saying that religion is bad. I'm saying not being driven because of specific agendas, because, you know, everyone manipulates religion, everyone manipulates politics, everyone manipulates positions. So all this manipulation that's happening, when did these news stations and where they receive their funding from, and these apps, some of them are honest, but they're communicating the negative. So let's take a look at the world around us. What are we actually seeing, guys? I'm going to bring Boss back into the conversation really quickly as I share some of this information. And what I want to highlight very quickly, if you allow me to say here, is let me ask you a question. If we know that I can observe myself, so I can watch myself feeling the feelings and getting irritated by the news, or if I'm having an argument with a friend, or I'm having an argument with a loved one, or with a brother, or with a business partner, or with my children, or whatever it is, or with someone who's offering me service, or with a cop, or whoever it is. Ultimately, I can watch myself going in the situation, and then I'm able to observe myself. If I can't do it in the moment because I don't have that muscle yet, and many people don't, and that's okay, or certain situations I can, other situations I can't. So I could at work, but maybe I can't at family because I'm still too emotionally, there's too much emotions involved in it. Then what I can actually do is say to myself, Tayyib, in this situation, as I look back during the day at the day and what's happened to me during the day, and I reflect on the experiences I've had, what can I learn from this experience? So here I go through these steps. What do I observe? What triggered me? Okay, what does that trigger? Where does it come from? Is it a negative trigger? Is it a positive trigger? Is it a beneficial trigger? Is it a trigger that creates hope, or is it a trigger that reduces hope? Does it increase my sense of safety, or does it reduce my sense of safety? Does it increase my sense of empowerment, or does it reduce my sense of empowerment? Because here I need to know what garbage I'm allowing into my brain. Yes, because once it goes into my brain, it becomes part of my reality. And once it becomes part of my reality, then I must experience it and I will pay the price for it. So here I say to myself, okay, when has the news ever really made a difference in my life? And I can tell you right now, for me personally, that's my personal choice, it hasn't. And in fact, when something very urgent is happening, I always get it by WhatsApp. So we're so quick to share really urgent news, but we're not so quick to share the daily news, which is just a bunch of garbage, okay? And this is not to say that reporters don't do a good job. God bless you. I know you're sometimes on the sidelines trying to give us direct access to valuable information. So I'm not against what you do. But what I'm saying is, if I don't know how that affects me, then I'm in trouble. So let me just check Instagram really quick. I see a lot of responses here. I'm sorry that there are connection problems on StreamYard. It's okay. You don't have to stop watching the news, but you can choose how to react to it. We shouldn't. Okay, external world, etc. It's going to threaten my peace of my mind, and I'm simply going to walk away, remain quiet, agree to disagree. No? Absolutely. If it's going to threaten your peace of mind, then you have the power and the capacity to walk away. But look, I'm not saying stop watching the news. I'm saying if the news is a trigger for you, stop watching the news until it ceases to be a trigger. And ultimately ask yourself, hey, what's the point? Why do you watch stuff that's going to make you feel worse? Because believe it or not, even if you think you're impervious, yani you have inoculation and you cannot be affected by the news, it will affect you in the long term because repetition is the key to the brain. So here's a little trick. And let me just look at what May wrote. May, thank you for your comment. What the reason we need in difficult situation, we need someone to out of us to tell us the point of view, not ourselves, even if we are mature enough. What's the reason? Because you can decide, May, if I understood your question correctly, to decide how it affects you before it affects you. So in your life, if you notice that every time you put spices, you get an upset stomach in food, what do? You stop putting spices in the food. You can still love spices, and it's very important to you, but you know that it's not, the best thing for you. It unfortunately upsets your stomach. The mind is the same. Guys, thoughts are real. Thoughts take up real space in your brain. Thoughts are material. They are transmitted as an energy from something that is at the quantum field into what we call real neurons connecting with each other, sending real energy impulses at the level of the brain, neurons being the cells in the brain. So thoughts take up space in your brain. And they are like files. So when you go to your desktop in a computer and you have different files, some of these files you delete at the end of the day. That's what thoughts are. We're trying to decide, are these files that I need, or should I get rid of them? And where did they come from? Do I need these files? Are they necessary? Or should I stop using this program that's creating these files for me that I don't want because they're taking up space? So the danger here, Nayul, just to tell you, is that if you're watching on the news on a daily basis for over 60 days, your belief systems about the reality of the world will change. That's why social media is so dangerous, because the algorithms that exist are manipulating our version of reality. So believe it or not, you are not impervious to this. Nobody is. And here's the simplest test. If you think the news is a trigger, stop watching the news for a week and see what happens to your reality. If there's a change, if you feel more peaceful, if you feel more relaxed, if you feel the world is better for you, that's proof right there. You don't need me to be there. Okay? When you identify a trigger, start eliminating it and test for a week. Try for 7 days. It's not the end of the universe. Nothing's going to happen in 7 days. Boss, what do you think? I've kept you on hold for a long time. Sorry.
I'm actually a live example of not watching the news because I don't even have a TV. Because what
fair.
comes from the external factors, like external news, that's what something I can't control. So I can't control what the news is feeding my mind. So I just replaced TV with books. I know not a lot of people agree with that, but also if there's an urgent piece of information that I have to know, it's gonna be circulated and I'm gonna get it at the end of the day. So that's how I feel about it. I also agree 100%. I know not a lot of people are not gonna watch TV and replace it with books, but once you start picking and choosing what you actually want to feed your thoughts or your mind with, it could be the news in a book or history. I'm not telling everybody to go read history because I don't. But I choose and pick what I want to feed my brain. And I think at the end of the day, that's what forms your thoughts and reality. So to go back to what you were saying, I am a live example of not watching the news, and it works perfect for me. But yeah, again, if there's something urgent that you need to know, it's going to come to you at the end of the day.
That's so vital to say, and I thank you for bringing that up. Ahmad, I noticed that you wrote a question. I'm so sorry, buddy. I didn't see it because I'm taking a look at my screen. You said, check my question out. Let me just see. Okay. This is about the news. What about someone you cannot stop talking with them? Yes, because that was my next comment. That's pretty good. Okay, so what I also wanted to highlight for you guys, boss, thank you so much for your participation. I really appreciate it. You can stay on the call with me if you keep your microphone on mute, and maybe I'll jump over for a couple of questions more with you. I so appreciate your time and your energy. Let me just highlight a couple more things for everybody here. So first thing I want to highlight, guys, is that triggers don't just need to be the news. The reason why I use the news is just to illustrate an idea. So sources of negative triggers for you are something that you got to figure out. Let me finish these steps very quickly, just so that we don't run out of time. So step number 4, once I have a better understanding of, what it is that's triggering me and what's bothering me and what that thing that's affecting me has an impact on my life, you have the power, okay, to decide to eliminate it or change the effect of it. So this kind of answers your question, Amar. Change the effect of it on you, or to limit it, take your power back, or to address it, which is my favorite, which is face the situation. And facing is not aggression. Facing is owning up to the situation, being responsible. Okay, if you made a mistake, apologize. If it's not your fault, set limits for individuals, people, resources, tools. If you see yourself being dragged into addiction when it comes to watching Netflix or other stuff also, because these are also negative sources for you. When you watch series, and these series that are like these emotional series that are communicating the soap opera drama kind of stuff, okay, then that is a very dangerous way to poison your brain, okay? And the beautiful thing about what Boss was saying when it came, it's such a cute name, when it comes to reading, is that reading is something that doesn't manipulate you as much as watching the news, because you have time to reflect on it. But once it goes into your brain, in fact, it is much more intense and much more powerful. So words are very, very powerful. However, you still have the ability to say this word makes sense in my reality, or this word doesn't make sense. And finally, take action. Whatever action you need to take a small action towards, okay, take actions or small ones towards improving the situation, even if the action wasn't perfect. Now, here's the trick. The trick to this, guys, is that this isn't done one time. In order for this, to be effective in your reality, you got to do this daily. Okay? You got to do this daily. You could do this at the end of every day. If you spend 10 minutes at the end of every day doing this type of exercise, going over what you're observing during the day, and you can do this on every experience that mattered for you, okay? Experiences that affected you during the day, that had an impact on you during the day. Then what you're doing actually is you're slowly but surely rewiring the impact of triggers, and you're becoming aware of these triggers and how they affect you, okay? And in this way, you're actually gaining the power to be able to become the observer and say, okay, at a cognitive level, I now know that this experience causes this kind of an impact. So what do I do with it, and how do I deal with it? Now, when it comes to triggers, I'm going to list a couple of triggers for you. Let me try to put them here, in fact. I'm going to write some triggers for you so that we have the kinds of triggers that might trigger you. There's hundreds and hundreds of triggers, but just basic ones. So it could be any source of negative or painful info. Okay? So here what we're saying is anything that gives you negative or painful info. If you're watching a movie and that movie has a negative or painful amount of information being shared with you, and it goes away, your brain, the thalamus, is capable of recognizing that it's a movie. But when it's the news, it's not. It thinks that the news is real because you've been trained over life to assume that the news is real. So be careful of that. However, if you watch the same information, like in a series that's negative all the time, you can start to relate to that series, and it can start to affect the way you see the world, and you can start to believe that this is real. So if you notice that some of you have watched Friends for a very long time, if you watch 7 seasons of Friends or 8 seasons of Friends, you'll notice that by the end, you start to relate to Joey and all the team. Like, you start to feel like they really are your friends. And that's because the brain gets confused between reality and imagination for many people. So you have to be very careful of that. Other sources of negativity are people who are maybe in pain, okay, or they are releasing these experiences on you. So we call it drama, triangle, and transactional analysis. So these are people who are causing you a lot of problems. This happens between husband and wife, happens between people who work together. It happens in many, many cases where people in your life are labeled as toxic. But they are not toxic. They are wonderful people going through their own challenges and difficulties in their life, even if they did bad things. So we need to really forgive and forget, to be free of these people. I forgive and forget, okay? Because it's not our job to judge them. However, if you don't have that luxury, if you live with that person, you're stuck with that person in a lockdown, and that person's part of your life, and that person's continuously creating this type of toxicity for you, you can manage back, okay, by using something called the power, protection, and permission triangle, okay? Which means instead of hurting these people, you can say, look, you have the right to think whatever you want to think. I am going to let you know that when this kind of situation happens, it's not acceptable for me. If we're going to enjoy living together, please understand that this is the kind of communication that I need to receive from you in order for us to understand each other, because my intention for you is for us to get along. So remember, if you are creating drama, and most times in this situation, if Joe's creating the drama for someone else, okay, May, Sarah, I don't know, Lena, Christina, whatever it is, in this case, Joe is actually creating the same thing as the news. He becomes the trigger. He becomes the person who's causing the bad behavior. And in this situation, if he's aggressive, especially now, we know in COVID, we have a lot of statistics that talk about the fact that a lot of people, especially women, are facing are carrying the weight of the COVID lockdowns, because the first people to lose their job, from what I've learned from an amazing session with some wonderful female leaders who were able to share with me some of this valuable information in a session I was doing, okay, was that the first group of people to get hurt and to face the trauma of the lockdown are women and mothers. They lose their job first. All the nurses, the majority of them are women, so they're the ones on the front lines that are actually catching COVID and suffering. Moms have to do both their career and their job, and at the same point in time, also they have to take care of their children. And many times, this is Lucy. Everybody, you can say hello to Lucy, who likes to be in the middle of my live sessions. She's just saying she wants to be loved. And in this situation, you'll notice that they're having to take care of their children with the live online schooling. They're dealing with all these challenges. So women are really facing a very big chunk of the weight. And men who don't know how to express their emotions, who are stuck at home, are now being forced to release, well, not forced, but they're actually choosing to release their anger on their family and on their wives, and can sometimes become abusive. That's why the UN has shown that the number and the percentage of abuse in families from men to women has increased dramatically in some countries, up to 50 and 60%, because of the lockdown, because men are not knowing how to deal with this stuff, okay? So here it's really, really important for us to understand that we are always the causality of the situation that exists in our life. And it starts by addressing the truth. It starts by taking responsibility, not just because we're saying other people are the source or the trigger, but our own thoughts about ourselves can be the trigger. So another source of a trigger can be our limiting beliefs. So if you believe, since you were a kid, that you are bad at math, or that you are ugly, or that you are introverted. I'm not saying if you are, you aren't. I'm saying if you believe it, okay? Or I don't know, all these crazy thoughts, or you have a big nose, or whatever it is, or you're bald. That's one that applies to me. So what's going to happen from this experience is you're going to notice that to an extent, okay, you are allowing these things to affect who you are as a person and to affect how you deal with this reality. So just taking a look at my notes, if there's something else I want to share with you really quickly. And also take a look at what you guys shared with me. So I see Yusra. Can you tell us, please, what kind of support can be offered to frontliners who are fighting COVID-19, since for sure they have overthoughts of fears and is a reality? Yeah, I mean, look, I've been saying this forever. Please, 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 in Lebanese, rhamu, in Arabic, rhamu, the nurses and doctors who are now working 24-hour shifts to keep our families alive. Are you willing to lose your father, mother, uncle, friend? I've lost 8 friends in the past month and a half to COVID. This is ridiculous. Why? Because people don't follow the rules. So in this situation, I can sit there in my life and feel very angry and upset and blame. It's a trigger. And blame the Lebanese population. I can blame the government. And I can blame the minister for not doing an effective job. And I can blame them for the way they're choosing these lockdown procedures, which are absolutely ridiculous, to be honest. When you decide to do a complete lockdown, you don't do it 3 days in advance and everyone rushes to supermarkets and then everyone gets COVID from everyone because people don't know anyways how to protect themselves, and you're actually causing them to be in a situation where everyone's next to everyone. How intelligent is that? So what you do is you do something called planning, which means we think in advance and we say to ourselves, what is the impact of this choice? What are we reinforcing in people's belief systems? Are we reinforcing fear, or are we reinforcing empowerment? Are we inviting maturity and responsibility, or are we inviting them to act and behave like kids and say, khalas, I don't care anymore. COVID's going to kill me. Let it kill me. I want to live, because people are fed up, because they don't have that resilience anymore, because they are overloaded with the challenges that exist today in their life. So for God's sake, because God is watching us and saying, please listen to me, my children. I gave you a brain to be used. So we are not arguing for the politicians in Lebanon about whether you stole our money or not, because that's secondary right now. What we are arguing about is that at least God gave you a brain and you're using that brain to steal. Use that brain also to keep your family and your people safe. Common sense. So anyways, does defensive tricks happen upon our choice? I don't know what you mean by tricks, May, but the word tricks is not a good word. So any times you do tricks to you or to others, you're going to get tricks back. Look, remember this. Look at me right now. I'm looking at the camera is looking back at me. What you're seeing right now is a mirror of my reaction. So if I scratch my nose, or I scratch my I don't know, I said nose, but I scratch my beard, then the camera is going to scratch its beard. So life is like that. If I send a kiss to the camera is going to send a kiss back to me. And that's life. When we behave with love and care and understanding, then we get that back. So on another note, for all the politicians that are out there, I don't blame them for hating us. You know why? Because all we've ever done since they've taken control is hate them. So am I saying that we're supposed to love them? No. But I am saying that we're supposed to treat them with love, because these are the values that we come from. Now, some of you might say, John, you're crazy. This is ridiculous. You can't do that. But you know what? I need to get to his inner heart. And to get to his inner heart, I can't do that by aggressing him, because all he understands is the language of aggression. So in this situation, you have a choice. Now, let me get back to my point so I don't waste time. May, sorry, yes, mechanisms, I guess. I'm so sorry for Arabic. I apologize. I don't mean to judge you, but my brain is, partially limited right now. I mean, I'm so terribly sorry. I wish I could understand what you're saying. If someone understood what May wrote in Arabic, can you please translate that for me to make things simple? I just want to share. Let me just check. We don't have a lot of time left. We're beyond time. I think we're almost done with time. So let me just wrap up this idea very, very quickly with 2 small things. Go back to my notes. Okay. The last thing I want to share with you guys very quickly is I look at what I've written. Yeah, I mean, where are you? Here we go. Sometimes, yeah. So last thing I want to share with you guys is it's very important for us to renew our mind. Okay, and I'm gonna add, boss, you're still with me, right?
I am.
Okay, I just want to check. Have I answered your question from the beginning of the session when you talked to me about negative and positive thoughts?
You have.
Yay. Okay, cool. Do you have any further questions before I wrap up for today's session?
I might have one for you to talk about in your next sessions because I know that's a big question.
Okay, go ahead.
So when you talked about toxic people,
Yeah.
how can you identify? So I sometimes think that I do understand where like other people's hurts are coming from.
Mhm,
But at the same time, I try to be very understanding. But
mhm.
that point lets other people cross their boundaries just because I understand where they're coming from. I don't know
Yes.
how to deal with that instead of trying to fix them because you actually can't. They have to
Yeah.
fix themselves. But
Thank you
that's for
so
another day. But just a thought about what you were talking about.
much. Okay,
And thank you very much for this
my
webcast
pleasure.
today. Again, we appreciate it.
Thank you. You've been amazing. Thank you for joining, for you and for Lynn. It's such a pleasure to have you guys connected. I just see May respond to defensive mechanism. I'm going to tell you thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session. Okay, as far as May, okay, defensive mechanisms. So a defensive mechanism, May, in general, is us responding to the situation and the like. So if someone is shouting at you, you're defending yourself, okay, by doing the same. So what I'm trying to do is I want you to step out of these mechanisms, step out of the game, and step above and take a look at the situation from above. So it's sort of like this. I'm going to draw it for you guys right now. It's sort of like saying, okay, where is my pen? So this is me, or whoever, well, that's you, May, and this is the other person who's causing you pain. And usually we get stuck in this battle between each other of attack and defend. Okay? I think you guys can see this. Let me make this larger. Okay? I think everyone can see this. What I'd like you to do is ask yourself, what would happen if you stepped above and observed the situation when you're looking at it from above? So you're here, another version of you is here, and is the observer, and is trying to understand this person's pain, and then decide how to react proactively. Because look, most times, unless that person's pathologically sick, like that person has an issue, a mental issue, human beings in general will behave in an attack mode due to fear or loss, losing something, judgment, value, etc., or unfairness, okay, or anger, okay, or I don't know, attention, need for attention, and so many other things. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here in this situation is I can choose to not play this game with that person, but it doesn't mean that I cannot forgive them. Why do I forgive people? Why do we say we need to forgive? And forgiveness means deep in our heart, truly, deeply forgiving and sending peace and love to that person. Why? Because then we free ourselves from the prison of that person's behavior and its effect on us. I won't be able to think clearly if I'm stuck in that prison of pain. If I can only perceive that person through the prison of pain, whether that pain that person's causing me is legit or not legit, because sometimes it's perceived pain. So let me give you an example. Let's say you and your brother fight all the time. And then 5 years later, he comes to communicate with you and you instantly go into fight mode because you're used to be in fight mode. So in this case, what's happening is this is a trained reaction. So again, it's a belief system. Going back to Joe here in the beginning, sorry. It's a belief system that you've developed. I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to this. About your brother and how your brother behaves around you. Okay, right here, the belief system. Okay. And so it's very important for us to remember people change. You know, when you say you can't change someone, true, you can't change them, but they can change. People change. So forgive them. Forgive them with all your heart. Forgive them for you before for them. Forgive them because God forgives them. So it's not our job to judge them. Everyone makes a mistake. Everyone makes bad choices. The people who are in charge of our country are making bad choices. But you know what? So are we. Because ultimately, we're the ones who are not wearing the masks. We're the ones who are not following protocol. When we followed protocol at the beginning, COVID was at 20 people. And it was 20 people per day because certain people were not following the protocol. But today, when we all decided to say, khalas, I don't care, I want to go out on New Year's, I want to do the things I want to do, or we don't know where we got it, we are equally responsible. We equally must suffer the circumstances of our choices. And we are equally responsible to get ourselves out of the trap. If you know that your actions hurt others, then you are responsible. So instead of blaming people, okay, look, toxic emotions are blame, destroys your neural network, anger destroys your neural network, lack of forgiveness, it is a prison. Lack of forgiveness, and especially if you carry that lack of forgiveness for years. I know people who haven't forgiven each other for 20 years. And every time they open up a conversation, they say, 20 years ago, I lent you, I don't know what, and I gave you, I don't know what, and they're still holding each other responsible for 20 years ago. So, do you know why we get trapped? And this is my opinion. Because God, in His infinite wisdom, allows us to be judged by the judgments that we judge others by. These judgments that you place on yourself are the same rules that you're using to judge others. And in this process, you have trapped yourself into a trap of anger, irritation, bothersome, and you build all these up. You do it with one person, now do it with 20, now do it with 25 situations. And what happens is you've polluted the entirety of who you are. So it's like taking a bottle of water and every day you put a drop of ink, and that ink is lack of forgiveness, anger, and trying to remember what these people have done for you. By the end of 5 years, your bottle has no more pure water in it. Every time you drink it, you're poisoning yourself and you get stomach aches. Please understand, I don't have all the answers. I'm just sharing with you experiences to the best of my knowledge. You have the power to observe your behavior, to use mindfulness, to follow these techniques, to change your life. It's your choice. It's the outcome of your life that you're responsible for, nobody else. So do you want to damage your brain, or do you want to free your mind and be the engineer and architect of the quality of your life? And if you want to do that, then these 5 steps that I shared, that are not mine, by the way, I'm not taking any credit for them. These are steps that are shared all the time. So going back to step number 1, what am I observing? So I spend 10 minutes a day at the end of the evening thinking about my behavior, thinking about experiences I had in my day, especially ones that bother me, saying, what am I observing? What did I see, hear, feel, and sense? Okay, what was the trigger, or what were the triggers? What are these triggers? Do they happen all the time? Is this always the same reaction? Can I get rid of this trigger source, or do I need it in my life? If so, if I need it in my life, can I change the meaning of it? So that's where you start a dialogue and you discuss this with yourself and you try to understand it. And day 1, you won't understand it. Day 2, you won't. Day 3, you won't. Day 10, you will. Maybe day 15, you'll have a breakthrough. You'll understand something amazing about yourself. Day 20, you'll discover something new. So what does this mean? Do this on a daily basis, and I promise you, your life will change for the better. Because once you start to do this, you become grateful for what you do have. And gratitude is another beautiful way to free yourself of pain and darkness and toxicity. Gratitude is a beautiful medicine that will give you back hope, and that will let you recognize the blessings that God has put in your life. Long session. Wow. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I want to wish you a beautiful night. I'm so grateful to your patience with me. I've spoken a lot. Hope this wasn't very dramatic. Unfortunately, I don't think the entire session will be recorded since we've exceeded on 6:30, 7:30. Yeah. So we exceeded some of the time. That's weird. I'm not sure how Insta is still live. But I just want to tell you guys, I love you with all my heart, and I'm so grateful for you. If I've harmed anyone that is watching this, please forgive me from the bottom of your heart, because I have no bad intentions, because it's always great to ask for forgiveness. As we give forgiveness and we receive forgiveness, that's where healing takes place in human beings, and that's how we learn and evolve and make better choices in our life. And instead of blaming others, let's see how we can support others to become the best version of themselves, even if they've done big mistakes with us, even if they've stolen the country. They don't deserve to be in power, but right now, if they are, then maybe we need to change our dialogue and focus on what we can change in Lebanon instead of focusing on what's wrong with Lebanon. Because I don't think in the past year, if you focused on what's wrong, it's actually increased or improved Lebanon in 1%. So yeah. Take care. Have a beautiful day. God bless you. And let me see how to shut this thing off. Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye-bye. So that is Insta ending now. And bye, guys. Bye, Facebook. Bye, YouTube. Bye, everyone. God bless you. Have a beautiful weekend.